60 years ago, up among the New Hampshire hills, lived Farmer Bassett with a house full of sturdy sons and daughters growing up about him. They were poor in money, but rich in land and love, for the wide acres of wood, corn, and pasture land fed, warmed, and clothed the flock, while mutual patience, affection, and courage made the old farmhouse a very happy home. November had come, the crops were in, and barn, buttery, and bin were overflowing with the harvest that rewarded the summer's hard work. The kitchen was a jolly place just now, for in the great fireplace roared a cheerful fire. On the walls hung garlands of dried apples, onions, and corn. Up aloft from the beams shone crookneck squash, juicy hams, and dried venison, for in those days deer still haunted the deep forests, and hunters flourished. Savory smells were in the air. On the crane hung steaming kettles, and down among the red embers copper saucepans simmered, all suggestive of some approaching feast. A white-headed baby lay in the old blue cradle that had rocked 7 other babies, now and then lifting his head to look out like a round full moon, then subsided to kick and crow contentedly, and suck the rosy apple he had no teeth to bite. 2 small boys sat on the wooden settle, shelling corn for popping, and picking out the biggest nuts from the goodly store their own hands had gathered in October. 4 young girls stood at the long dresser, busily chopping meat, pounding spice, and slicing apples, and the tongues of Tilly, Prue, Roxy, and Rhodey went as fast as their hands. Farmer Bassett and Eph, the oldest boy, were choring around outside, for Thanksgiving was at hand, and all must be in order for that time-honored day. To and fro from table to hearth bustled buxom Mrs. Bassett, flushed and flowery, but busy and blithe as the queen bee of this busy little hive could be. I do like being seasonable and having things to mind. Thanksgiving dinners can't be drove, and it does take a sight of victuals to fill up these hungry stomachs, said the good woman, as she gave a vigorous stir to the kettle of cider apple sauce, and cast a glance of housewifely pride at the fine array of pies set forth on the buttery shelves. Only one more day, and then it'll be time to eat. I didn't take but 1 bowl of hasty pudding this morning, so I shall have plenty of room when the nice things come, confided Seth to Saul as he cracked a large hazelnut as easily as a squirrel. No need of my starving beforehand. I always have room enough, and I'd like to have Thanksgiving every day, answered Solomon, gloating like a young ogre over the little pig that lay nearby, ready for roasting. Sakes alive, I don't, boys. It's a marcy it don't come but once a year. I should be worn to thread paper with all this extra work atop of my winter weaving and spinning, laughed their mother, as she plunged her plump arms into the long bread trough and began to knead the dough as if a famine was at hand. Tilly, the oldest girl, a red-cheeked, black-eyed lass of 14, was grinding briskly at the mortar, for spices were costly, and not a grain must be wasted. Prue kept time with the chopper, and the twins sliced away at the apples till their own little arms ached, for all knew how to work, and did so now with a will. I think it's real fun to have Thanksgiving at home. I'm sorry Grandma is sick, so we can't go there as usual, but I like to mess round here. Don't you, girls? Asked Tilly, pausing to take a sniff at the spicy pestle. It will be kind of lonesome with only our own folks. I'd like to see all the cousins and aunts and have games and sing, cried the twins, who were regular little romps and could run, swim, coast, and shout as well as their brothers. I don't care a mite for all that. It will be so nice to eat dinner together, warm and comfortable at home, said quiet Prue, who loved her own cozy nooks like a cat. Come, girls, fly around and get your chores done so we can clear away for dinner just as soon as I clap my bread in the oven, called Mrs. Bassett presently, as she rounded off the last loaf of brown bread, which was to feed the hungry mouths that seldom tasted any other. Here's a man coming up the hill, lively. Guess it's Glad Hopkins. Pa told him to bring a dozen oranges if they weren't too high, shouted Saul and Seth, running to the door, while the girls smacked their lips at the thought of this rare treat, and Baby threw his apple overboard as if getting ready for a new cargo. But all were doomed to disappointment, for it was not Gad with the much-desired fruit. It was a stranger, who threw himself off his horse and hurried up to Mr. Bassett in the yard with some brief message that made the farmer drop his axe and look so sober that his wife guessed at once some bad news had come, and crying, "Mother's wuss! I know she is!" Out ran the good woman, forgetful of the flour on her arms and the oven waiting for its most important batch. The man said old Mr. Chadwick down to Keene stopped him as he passed and told him to tell Mrs. Bassett her mother was failing fast and she'd better come today. He knew no more, and having delivered his errand he rode away, saying it looked like snow and he must be jogging or he wouldn't get home till night. "We must go off, Eldad. Hitch up and I'll be ready in less'n no time," said Mrs. Bassett, not waiting a minute in tears and lamentations, but pulling off her apron as she went, with her mind in a sad jumble of bread, anxiety, turkey, sorrow, haste, and cider applesauce. A few words told the story, and the children left their work to help her get ready, mingling their grief for Grandma with regrets for the lost dinner. "I'm dreadful sorry, dears, but it can't be helped. I couldn't cook nor eat no way now, and if that blessed woman gets better sudden, as she has before, we'll have cause for Thanksgiving, and I'll give you a dinner you won't forget in a hurry," said Mrs. Bassett, as she tied on her brown silk pumpkin hood with a sob for the good old mother who'd made it for her. Not a child complained after that, but ran about helpfully, bringing moccasins, heating the footstone, and getting ready for a long drive, because Grandma lived 20 miles away, and there were no railroads in those parts to whisk people to and fro like magic. By the time the old yellow sleigh was at the door, the bread was in the oven, and Mrs. Bassett was waiting, with her camlet cloak on, and the baby done up like a small bale of blankets. "Now, Eph, you must look after the cattle like a man, and keep up the fires, for there's a storm brewing, and neither the children nor dumb critters must suffer," said Mr. Bassett, as he turned up the collar of his rough coat and put on his blue mittens, while the old mare shook her bells as if she preferred the trip to Keene to hauling wood all day. "Tilly, put extra comfortables on the bed tonight. The wind is so searchin' up chamber. Have baked beans and puddin' for dinner, and whatever you do, don't let the boys get all the mince pies, or you'll have them down sick. I shall come back the minute I can leave Mother. Pa will come tomorrer anyway, so keep snug and be good. I depend on you, daughter. Use your jedgment, and don't let nothin' happen while Mother's away." "Yes'm, yes'm. Goodbye, goodbye," called the children as Mrs. Bassett was packed into the sleigh and driven away, leaving a stream of directions behind her. Eph, the 16-year-old boy, immediately put on his biggest boots, assumed a somber, responsible manner, and surveyed his little responsibilities with a paternal air, drolly like his father's. Tilly tied on her mother's bunch of keys, rolled up the sleeves of her homespun gown, and began to order about the younger girls. They soon forgot about poor Granny, and found it great fun to keep house all alone, for Mother seldom left home, but ruled her family in the good old-fashioned way. There were no servants, for the little daughters were Mrs. Bassett's only maids, and the stout boys helped their father, all working happily together with no wages but love, learning in the best manner the use of their heads and hands with which they were to make their own way in the world. The few flakes that caused the farmer to predict bad weather soon increased to a regular snowstorm, with gusts of wind, for up among the hills winter came early and lingered long. But the children were busy, happy, and warm indoors, and never minded the rising gale nor the whirling white storm outside. Tilly got them a good dinner, and when it was over, the two elder girls went to their spinning, for in the kitchen stood the big and little wheels and baskets of wool rolls, ready to be twisted into yarn for the winter's knitting, and each day brought its own stint of work to the daughters, who hoped to be as thrifty as their mother. Eph kept up a glorious fire and superintended the small boys, who popped corn and whittled boats on the hearth, while Roxy and Rhodey dressed corncob dolls in the settle corner, and Bose, the brindled mastiff, lay on the braided mat, luxuriously warming his old legs. Thus employed, they made a pretty picture, these rosy boys and girls in their homespun suits with the rustic toys or tasks which most children nowadays would find very poor or tiresome. Tilly and Prue sang as they stepped to and fro, drawing out the smoothly twisted threads to the musical hum of the great spinning wheels. The little girls chatted like magpies over their dolls and the new bedspread they were planning to make, all white dimity stars on a blue calico ground as a Christmas present for Ma. The boys roared at F's jokes and had rough and tumble games over Bose, who didn't mind them in the least. And so the afternoon wore pleasantly away. At sunset, the boys went out to feed the cattle, bring in heaps of wood, and lock up for the night, as the lonely farmhouse seldom had visitors after dark. The girls got simple supper out of brown bread and milk, baked apples, and a donut all round as a treat. Then they sat before the fire, the sisters knitting, the brothers with books or games, for F loved reading, and Saul and Seth never failed to play a few games of Morris with barleycorns on the little board they had made themselves at one corner of the dresser. When the moon-faced clock behind the door struck 9, Tilly tucked up the children under extra comfortables, and having kissed them all around, as Mother did, crept into her own nest, never minding the little drifts of snow that sifted upon her coverlet between the shingles of the roof, nor the storm that raged outside. As if he felt an unusual vigilance, old Bose lay down on the mat before the door, and Kitty had a warm hearth all to herself. If any late wanderer had looked in at midnight, he would have seen the fire blazing up again, and in the cheerful glow the old cat blinking her yellow eyes as she sat bolt upright beside the spinning wheel, like some sort of house goblin guarding the children while they slept. When they woke, like early birds, it still snowed, but up the little Bassets jumped, broke the ice in their pitchers, and went down with cheeks glowing like winter apples after a brisk scrub and scramble into their clothes. F was off to the barn, and Tilly soon had a great kettle of mush ready, which, with milk warm from the cows, made a wholesome breakfast for the 7 hearty children. "Now, about dinner," said the young housekeeper, as the pewter spoon stopped clattering, and the earthen bowl stood empty. "Ma said have what we like, but she didn't expect us to have a real Thanksgiving dinner, because she won't be here to cook it, and we don't know how," began Prue doubtfully. "I could roast a turkey and make a pudding as well as anybody, I guess. The pies are all ready, and if we can't boil vegetables and so on, we don't deserve any dinner," cried Tilly, burning to distinguish herself and bound to enjoy the utmost her brief authority. "Yes, yes," cried all the boys. "Let's have a dinner anyway. Ma won't care, and the good victuals will spoil if they ain't eaten up right. Pa is coming tonight, so we won't have dinner till late. That will be real genteel and give us plenty of time," added Tilly, suddenly realizing the novelty of the task she had undertaken. "Did you ever roast a turkey?" asked Roxy with an air of deep interest. "Should you darst to try?" asked Rhodey in an awe-stricken tone. "You will see what I can do. Ma said I was to use my judgment about things, and I'm going to. All you children have to do is to keep out of the way and let Prue and me work. F, I wish you'd put a fire in the best room, so the little ones can play in there. We shall want the settin' room for the table, and I won't have 'em pickin' round when we're fixin' things," commanded Tilly, bound to make her short reign a brilliant one. "I don't know about that. Ma didn't tell us to," began cautious F, who felt that this invasion of the sacred best parlor was a daring step. "Don't we always do it Sundays and Thanksgivings? Wouldn't Ma wish the children kept safe and warm anyhow? Can I get up a nice dinner with 4 rascals under my feet all the time? Come now, if you want roast turkey and onions, plum puddin', and mince pie, you'll have to do as I tell you, and be lively about it." Tilly spoke with such spirit, and her last suggestion was so irresistible, that F gave in, and laughing good-naturedly, tramped away to heat up the best room, devoutly hoping that nothing serious would happen to punish such audacity. The young folks delightedly trooped in to destroy the order of that prim apartment with housekeeping under the black horsehair sofa, riding on the arms of the best rocking chair, and doing a dance all over the well-waxed furniture. F, finding the society of the peaceful sheep and cows more to his mind than that of the two excited sisters, lingered over his chores in the barn as long as possible and left the girls in peace. Now Tilly and Prue were in their glory, and as soon as the breakfast things were out of the way, they prepared for a grand cooking time. They were handy girls, though they had never heard of a cooking school, never touched a piano, and knew nothing of embroidery beyond the samplers which hung framed in the parlor. Both rolled up their sleeves, put on their largest aprons, and got out all the spoons, dishes, pots, and pans they could find, so as to have everything handy, as Prue said. "Now, sister, we'll have dinner at 5. Pa will be here at that time if he's coming tonight, and be so surprised to find us all ready, for he won't have had any very nice victuals if Grandma is so sick," said Tilly importantly. "I shall give the children a piece at noon." Tilly meant lunch. "Doughnuts and cheese with apple pie and cider will please 'em. There's beans for Eph. He likes cold pork, so we won't have to stop to warm it up, for there's lots to do. And I don't mind saying to you, I'm dreadful dummersome about the turkey. It's all ready but the stuffing, and roasting is as easy as can be. I can baste first rate. Ma always likes to have me. I'm so patient and steady, she says," answered Prue, for the responsibility of this great undertaking did not rest upon her, so she took a cheerful view of things. "I know, but it's the stuffing that troubles me," said Tilly, rubbing her elbow as she eyed the immense fowl laid out on a platter before her. "I don't know how much I want, nor what sort of yarbs to put in. And he's so awful big. I'm kind of afraid of him." "I ain't. I fed him all summer, and he never gobbled at me. I feel real mean thinking of gobbling him." "Poor old chap," laughed Prue, patting her departed pet with an air of mingled affection and appetite. "Well, I'll get the puddin' off my mind first, for it ought to bile all day. Put the big kettle on, and see that the spit is clean while I get ready." Prue obediently tugged away at the crane with its black hooks, from which hung the iron tea kettle and three-legged pot. Then she settled the long spit in the grooves made for it in the tall andrians, and put the dripping pan underneath, for in those days meat was roasted as it should be, not baked in ovens. Meanwhile, Tilly attacked the plum pudding. She felt pretty sure of coming out right here, for she had seen her mother do it so many times. It looked very easy, so in went suet and fruit, all sorts of spice, to be sure she got the right ones, and brandy instead of wine. But she forgot both sugar and salt, and tied it in a cloth so tightly that it had no room to swell, so it would come out as heavy as lead and as hard as a cannonball, if the bag did not burst and spoil it all. Happily, unconscious of these mistakes, Tilly popped it into the pot and proudly watched it bobbing about before she put the cover on and left it to its fate. "I can't remember what flavorin' Ma puts in," she said when she had got her bread well soaked for the stuffing. "Sage and onions and applesauce go with goose, but I can't feel sure of anything but pepper and salt for a turkey. Ma puts in some kind of mint, I know, but I forget whether it's spearmint, peppermint, or pennyroyal," answered Prue, in a tone of doubt, but trying to show her knowledge of yarbs, or at least of their names. "Seems to me it's sweet marjoram or summer savory. I guess we'll put both in, and then we are sure to be right. The best is up garret. You run and get some, while I mash the bread," commanded Tilly, diving into the mess. Away trotted Prue, but in her haste she got catnip and wormwood, for the garret was darkish, and Prue's little nose was so full of the smell of onions she had been peeling that everything smelt of them. Eager to be of use, she pounded up the herbs and scattered the mixture with a liberal hand into the bowl. "It doesn't smell just right, but I suppose it will when it is cooked," said Tilly as she filled the empty stomach that seemed aching for food and sewed it up with blue yarn, which happened to be handy. She forgot to tie down legs and wings, but she set him by till his hour came, well satisfied with her work. It took a long time to get all the vegetables ready, for, as the cellar was full, the girls thought they could have every sort. Eph helped, and by noon all was ready for cooking, and the cranberry sauce, a good deal scorched, was cooling in the lean-to. Luncheon was a lively meal, and doughnuts and cheese vanished in such quantities that Tilly feared no one would have an appetite for her sumptuous dinner. The boys assured her that they would be starving by 5 o'clock, and Saul mourned bitterly over the little pig that was not to be served up. "Now, "You all go and coast while Prue and I set the table and get out the best chiny," said Tilly, bent on having her dinner look well, no matter what its other failings might be. The 4 younger Bassets trudged away to depose themselves in the snow and try the ice down by the old mill, where the great wheel turned and splashed so merrily in the summertime. Eph took out his fiddle and scraped away to his heart's content in the parlor, while the girls, after a short rest, set the table and made all ready to dish up dinner when that exciting moment came. It was not all that sort of a table we see now, but would look very plain and countrified to us, with its green-handled knives and 2-pronged steel forks, its red and white china and pewter platters, scoured till they shone, with mugs and spoons to match, and a bright brown jug for the cider. The cloth was coarse, but white as snow, and the little maids had seen the blue-eyed flax grow, out of which their mother wove the linen they had watched and watered while it bleached in the green meadow. They had no napkins and little silver, but the best tankard and Ma's few wedding spoons were set forth in state. The 4 young Bassets returned, while the older girls dished up dinner. They were struggling to get the pudding out of the cloth when Roxy called out, "Here's Pa!" "There's folks with him," added Rhodey. "Lots of 'em. I see 2 big sleighs chock full," shouted Seth, peering through the dusk. "It looks like a cemetery. Guess Grandma's dead and come up to be buried here," said Saul in a solemn tone. This startling suggestion made Tilly, Prue, and Eph hasten to look out, full of dismay at such an ending of their festival. "If that is a funeral, the mourners are uncommonly jolly," said Eph dryly, as merry voices and loud laughter broke the white silence without. "I see Aunt Cynthia and Cousin Hetty, and there's Moses and Amos. I do declare, Pa's bringing 'em all home to have some fun here," cried Prue as she recognized one familiar face after another. "Oh, my patience! Ain't I glad I got dinner, and don't I hope it will turn out good!" exclaimed Tilly, while the twins pranced with delight and the small boys roared, "Hooray for Pa! Hooray for Thanksgiving!" The cheer was answered heartily, and in came father, mother, baby, aunts, and cousins, all in great spirits, and all much surprised to find such a festive welcome awaiting them. "Ain't Grandma dead at all?" asked Saul in the midst of the kissing and handshaking. "Bless your heart, no. It was all a mistake of old Mr. Chadwick's. He's as deaf as an adder, and when Mrs. Brooks told him Mother was mendin' fast, and she wanted me to come down today, certain sure, he got the message all wrong, and give it to the fust person passin' in a way as to scare me most to death, and send us down in a hurry. Mother was sittin' up as shirk as you please, and dreadful sorry y'all didn't come. So to keep the house quiet for her and give you a taste of the fun, your Pa fetched us all up to spendin' the evenin', and we're gonna have a jolly time on it, to judge by the looks of things," said Aunt Cynthia, briskly finishing the tale when Mrs. Bassett paused for want of breath. "What in the world put it into your head we was comin', and set you up to gettin' such a supper?" asked Mr. Bassett, looking about him, well pleased and much surprised at the plentiful table. Tilly modestly began to tell, but the others broke in and sang her praises in a short chorus, in which bears, pigs, pies, and oranges were oddly mixed. Great satisfaction was expressed by all, and Tilly and Prue were so elated by the commendation of Ma and the aunts that they set forth their dinner, sure everything was perfect. But when the eating began, which it did the moment wraps were off, then their pride got a fall. For the first person who tasted the stuffing, it was big cousin Moses, and that made it harder to bear, nearly choked over the bitter morsel. "Tilly Bassett, whatever made you put wormwood and catnip in your stuffin'?" demanded Ma, trying not to be severe, for all the rest were laughing, and Tilly looked ready to cry. "I did it," said Prue, nobly taking all the blame, which caused Pa to kiss her on the spot and declare that it didn't do a mite of harm, for the turkey was all right. "I never seen onions cooked better. All the vegetables is well done, and the dinner a credit to you, my dears," declared Aunt Cynthia, with her mouth full of the fragrant vegetables she praised. The pudding was an utter failure, in spite of the braising brandy in which it lay, as hard and heavy as one of those stone balls on Squire Durkin's great gate. It was speedily whisked out of sight, and all fell upon the pies, which were perfect. But Tilly and Prue were much depressed, and didn't recover their spirits till dinner was over and the evening fun well under way. Blind Man's Bluff, Hunt the Slipper, Come Philander, and other lively games soon set everyone bubbling over with jollity. And when F struck up Money Musk on his fiddle, old and young fell into their places for a dance. All down the long kitchen they stood, Mr. and Mrs. Bassett at the top, the twins at the bottom, and then away they went, heeling and towing, cutting pigeon wings, and taking their steps in a way that would convulse modern children with their newfangled romps called dancing. Moses and Tilly covered themselves with glory by the vigor with which they kept it up, till fat Aunt Cynthia fell into a chair, breathlessly declaring that a very little of such exercise was enough for a woman of her heft. Apples and cider, chat and singing finished the evening, and after a grand goodbye all around, the guests drove away in the clear moonlight, which came just in time to cheer their long drive. When the jingle of the last bell had died away, Mr. Bassett said soberly as they stood together on the hearth, "Children, we have special cause to be thankful that the sorrow we expected was changed into joy, so we'll read a chapter 'fore we go to bed, and give thanks where thanks is due."